Staying Alive UK. Share your story.
And today I'm really excited to have on the podcast Alan Smithson. And before you hear from Alan, let me give you a quick intro. Alan is an entrepreneur and investor who has always been on the cutting edge of emerging technologies. After graduating from the University of Guelph with a molecular biology degree, Alan realized technology and music were his passions. He pursued a career in the DJ industry, which developed into an AV production and DJ company, Star Productions Inc., leading to the creation of the EMULATOR, the world's first touchscreen DJ system. His latest endeavour as co-founder and CEO of MetaVRse has entered him into the world of virtual and augmented reality experiences, becoming a leader in business applications for AR and VR and providing insight into this exploding field of technologies. Alan has been recognised as an industry pioneer and was recently mentioned in an article on 10 virtual reality leaders you should follow in 2016. Equally comfortable behind a turntable or a group of Fortune 500 executives, Alan continues to evolve MetaVRse in its innovations and is working on his third book, Immersive Technology for Business. Welcome to the Share Your Story podcast, Alan. How are you today?
I am fantastic today. It is a beautiful sunny day here in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you've joined me all the way from Canada. And our weather patterns are probably very similar. I'm in the UK, you're in Canada. And just before we went on, we talked about temperatures and they're about the same. So
yeah, we're going into fall and I think all the leaves are changing. It's beautiful here. And I think with the sun, we've had a couple of days of rain and now it's just a beautiful day. So wonderful day to be alive.
Great. Well, I'm really looking forward to speaking to you. Obviously, I've done some research and looked at all of your background and really looking forward to hearing your story and sharing it with our audience. My first question always to everybody is to hear a little bit about your personal life. So could you share with us where you were born, a bit about your education? Obviously, you've just said where you now live, but about your family, your hobbies, your interests, just so people can get a picture about, Alan behind the business. Who is he and where did he come from?
Sure. So I'm going to start from the beginning. I was born in Toronto. I'm third generation born in Toronto, Canada, which is kind of rare here in a multi-ethnic city. It's really rare to find somebody that's actually born here, and then even more rare to find somebody multi-generations. So I was born here. My dad was an entrepreneur. He actually had a business fixing furnaces. And so I kind of learned the business side from him. When I was really young, my parents split up. And so I ended up kind of living half time with my mom, half time with my dad.
Yeah.
I grew up in Scarborough, which is it's a rough area of the GTA, of the Greater Toronto area. And I grew up in what now is a pretty bad area. But at the time I didn't know any better. I was young. And actually when I was 10 years old, I got held at knife point. A kid held a knife to my throat. And within a week, my mom packed us up and moved me to a farm in the outskirts of the city. So I went from living as an inner city kid to living on a strawberry farm in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
Overnight. It was like this crazy culture shock. And, I think that was kind of one of the foundational moments that changed my life, because I think if I had just continued to live in that environment, maybe I wouldn't have been able to get out of it. So I think that, the environment has a lot to do with the way people change. So
Definitely.
Moved to Strawberry Farm, but my dad actually lived in a place called the Beaches in Toronto, which is this kind of really hip, trendy area, and he owned a jazz bar. So I grew up with jazz and live music, and then following my dad to work. So I learned about that, and my mom was always really she was a single mom, so she worked really hard to make sure that I had a roof over my head and everything that I needed. So I was really blessed to have two loving parents, albeit on different sides of the city.
Sure.
And so as I grew up, I didn't think anything about entrepreneurship, just was a normal kid and went to school. And when I was in high school, I started DJing and I started making mixtapes for all my friends. And I would record a radio podcast on the weekend, or it wasn't a podcast back then, it was a radio show.
Yes.
And I would record this late night radio show from 2 to 6 in the morning. And I remember I'd wake up when the tape would snap, and then I'd wake up, flip the tape over and hit record, go back to sleep.
Oh my God.
And then the next day I would take those, this kind of mix, and I would cut it all together into an actual mixtape. And then I would, once you had the master, you just make a bunch of copies and sell them to your friends. So I ended up making all these mixtapes, and I was DJing at, the school lunch cafeteria every day. And so didn't think it wasn't really a business. It was just, the thing I did. And when I went to university, I ended up going to the University of Guelph for molecular biology. And while I was there, I got a job in the bar, in the on-campus bar as a bouncer. And it was, I liked the nightclub scene. My dad owned a bar. I kind of grew up in that world, so it was a natural transition.
Sure.
And then one day the DJ didn't show up, and they said, "Does anybody know how to use this stuff?" And they had all the CDs, they had everything there, and I jumped right in and said, "Sure." Ended up doing a really good job, better than the guy who was in there before me, and they offered me the full-time Thursday, Friday gig, which was like the gig for the campus. So imagine I was the DJ for the on-campus bar, and then they had a nightclub as well. So I ended up DJing Thursday, Friday at the bar, or at the pub, and then Saturday at the nightclub. And I was really lucky. In my second year in university, I moved in with some guys who were, the kind of the gurus of DJing. And one guy was a really amazing DJ, and he could get on the mic and get people hyped, and he was really amazing at, playing the right song at the right time and getting people hyped. And the other DJ was a very technical DJ. He was flawless in his mixing. So I ended up learning from these two guys, and Rob and Brad, and I owe them everything, but those guys taught me how to be a fully well-rounded DJ. And from there, I started a DJ company out of university or in university rather. And it was, quite successful. And I started doing all the campus events and weddings and conferences and, all this stuff. And then as I was graduating, I took a job, and it was the only real job I ever had.
Yes.
I wanted to get into pharmaceuticals. And so as I was graduating, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be in a lab. I worked in a lab for about 3 months, and I was like, this is crazy. I hate this. It's very boring. And I was like, how do I use this science degree that I just spent 4.5 years getting? How do I use it? And so I was like, well, pharmaceutical rep seems right. I get to talk and sell, and, so then I realized that I can't, I didn't have the qualifications. I didn't have any sales experience, nothing. So I ended up taking this job working for a company called LimsLink. And I don't even, honestly, to this day, I still don't know what it was. It was like a software for, controlling lab equipment. Anyway, I took this job as a sales rep for them, and I worked there only 3 months. And, in my 3-month tenure, I spent pretty much 90% of the time trying to find pharmaceutical jobs. And it was really interesting. I wasn't getting anywhere with this pharmaceutical thing. And I went online, and I found this book called How to Get a Job in Pharmaceutical Sales.
Wow.
And I think it was like $80. And I remember,
Wow.
I didn't have any money. I was a starving student, and I ordered this book, and I got this book in the mail, and it was like literally somebody had printed it at Kinko's and put a bound on it. And I was so depressed. I was like, oh my God, I paid $80 for this piece of crap book.
Oh no.
Started reading it, and I just did everything in the book. And I swear to God, that was the best $80 I ever spent. Within 3 months, I had a job.
My
in pharma.
God.
That book literally was step by step instructions. And I wish I still kept it, because anybody who wants to get in, it was literally like, go out, find the other reps that are doing what you're doing, take them out for lunch, bring your resume, it was just step-by-step instructions, and I had a job in 3 months. It was amazing.
Whoa.
So I really lucked out there. And then, my first real job out of university was this pharmaceutical job, which isn't really a real job. You kind of, my first day on the job, they're like, here's your car keys, here's your computer, here's your territory list. Have a nice day. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. So they gave me a car, they gave me a computer,
Yeah.
and they gave me a credit card, expense account, and said, go. I'm like, all right, let's go. So here I am,
Where
20,
to?
21 or 22 years old, out of university. I went and bought a suit because, you need a suit for these things, and you had to wear a suit and tie every day to work.
Yeah.
This was back in the days when, pharma reps wore suits.
Yeah.
So I went around and I ended up being really, really good at the job, not because I was particularly good at it. It's because I just worked way more than most people. I hustled at that job. I went, I would leave my house at 6 a.m. and I wouldn't come home till, 9 p.m. And I didn't know any better. So I just called on as many doctors as possible in a 12 to 13 hour period.
Yeah.
And so over the next couple of years, I ended up being the number one sales rep in the country.
Wow.
For the company. And I took on a second territory. I started doing marketing stuff for them. I don't know if anybody's been in a doctor's office, but they have like a sample cupboard. And in the sample cupboard, there's, racks of different samples. And then all the reps are kind of vying for the little space within the sample cupboard. So I invented this thing. Basically what I did was I took this brochure that we made. It was like, 4 inches across by maybe 6 inches long. And it was like a card we would leave at the doctors to help them prescribe. And they would just throw it out in the garbage.
Sure.
But what I did was I created it so that I could fold it over the edge, and I taped it to my sample cupboard so that where my samples were, even when they were empty, my card was still there.
Ah. Brilliant.
And nobody had ever done that. So now if you go to, everybody does that. That's like standard now. But that was kind of the first shelf talker of the pharma in Canada anyway. I don't know about the rest of the world. But
so no one could get that space in the cupboard?
Because it was taped down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
My products were, this is where my products go. So, because you're always like jockeying for space and pushing people out of the way. It was it was a crazy thing. So anyway, I did that job for a few years, and I remember my last year at the company, I actually made my entire year target by June 15th. The entire year's target by June 15th. Went to my boss, and I created this whole presentation. Like, I want to, I want this, this, and this. And I went in, I said, okay, so look, I made my target. What do I do now? And her advice was just, keep working. Like, we're not going to reset your target. Your bonus isn't going to go up. And I was like, that's crazy.
I know.
I'm not going to work now. Like I
want 6 months off.
Yeah. So one of the other reps, he was a long tenured rep, and he said to me, he goes, just work the T shift. And I was like, what? The T shift? He goes, yeah, Tuesday to Thursday, 10 to 2.
I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that.
I worked Tuesday to Thursday, 10 to 2. So I literally worked 3 days a week for a couple hours. It was crazy. I was playing golf, and of course that was fun for a summer. I was mountain biking every day, and then I was like, okay, this sucks. I don't care, but like, I am, full of energy, and I don't want to just sit around.
No.
And so I went, and got another job, went for another pharmaceutical company with a bigger bonus structure, and started doing that. And in the meantime, I went on vacation and I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, yes.
And that book by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, Kawasaki, yeah.
Yeah, so I read this book, and it literally, the fundamental, message was, as an employee, you make money, you pay the tax out of that money, and then you spend what's left over.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas an entrepreneur, you make your money, you spend it, and you're only taxed on what's left over. And that simple fundamental difference meant you kept a lot more money in your pocket.
Yes.
And it really stuck with me. I was like, okay, well, why would anybody go and work for a job when they take half your wage away in taxes, and then you have to pay for your expenses?
This is an excellent point. So whoever's listening to this is really important.
It was that moment when I read that in the book, I just stopped and I was like, oh my God. And then I read the rest of the book, like top to bottom. I made notes. I, ripped pages out. I got crazy. And then, so I worked in the pharma business for another 3 months while I built a plan. I ended up getting fired from that last company because I was a bit of an arrogant dick. And, I would highly recommend not burning any bridges in anybody's life. I did that bridge, and I was very arrogant as a young kid. I was very successful and very good at my job. And here I had a young manager who was younger than me trying to tell me what to do. And I was like, look, I know what I'm doing. I'm making you money. Like, anyway, it wasn't the right way to do it. It was not the right way to exit. But I exited that job. And right after the next day on the flight back, I wrote the business plan for the Canadian prepaid medical plan. And what that was a block fee program. So doctors in Canada have provincial formularies. So each province pays the medical fees for every person in the province and in the country. So most of our medical is all covered by the health insurance plans covered by the country by our taxes. And there's a subsection of things that are not covered. So when you go for an insurance form and you go to your doctor, say, hey, can you help me with this insurance form? Notes and prescription refills. And there's a list of things that doctors just don't get paid for. And patients take advantage of. Not that they mean to take advantage of it. They just, they don't know that they have to pay for it. So there was no system in place to charge patients for this on scale. And so I created the first professional block fee program in Canada, which led me to, get my first taste of press. So I was actually in a full-page article in the Toronto Star, which is our largest newspaper.
Yes.
And this full-page article about how I was, revolutionizing the healthcare industry. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Look at this. And I used it for promotions and put it into our brochures. And it was amazing. Then the next week, I got an interview request by this guy at the Toronto Star. I was like, this is amazing. I'm getting all these requests. So I did an interview with this guy. The next week's segment was another full-page article about how I was destroying the healthcare system in Canada and how I was single-handedly the downfall of public medical care system in Canada. It was like, what just happened? I went from being a hero to a zero in a week.
Oh, wow.
That was my first taste of how the media can spin things. And here's my lesson that I took away from that, which, anybody listening, if you ever do media things, if you ever agree to do an interview, go and read the articles that person writes.
Yeah.
Because there are writers who their only job is to rip you apart.
Yeah.
And that happens more than you know. And I mean, all the negative things you see in the newspaper, those guys are and girls are literally just looking for ways to cause controversy.
Well, because that is news to people. People want to read that stuff. Nobody wants to hear, oh, this person's doing really well and look at all the good that he or she is doing.
Yes.
People want to see, what has this person done wrong? That's what they're more interested in.
They want to, and that's, our society is weird like that. We hold people up on pedestals and only to try to knock them down. Yeah. It's really amazing. But anyway.
It is amazing. Yeah.
That was my first lesson in the dealing with the media. Always read, whoever's going to interview you, always read what they're doing first. Great and you can always say no to an interview. And you can always just say, no, I've read your work and I don't feel that this is something I want to do, and just say no. It's better to say no than, people say it's any press is good press. It's not the case.
No.
It's better to just, you control your message and your destiny, and nobody's going to look out for you better than you. And I mean, I've hired PR people over the years, and to be honest, I've always done a better job than them because I know how to control my message. So
that's it.
So anyway, that was the Canadian prepaid medical plan. And I remember building that, and it was all manual back in the day. I wasn't a computer programmer. And if I had built it as a software platform, we would have been very, very successful. But I didn't understand that world and ended up doing everything manually. And it just ended up wearing on us. And we ended up closing that company. I remember the day that I had to close that company, I went to see my accountant, and he sat down with me. He looked at the numbers and he goes, okay, well, you're bleeding cash. You're literally, you have no money left and you can't continue doing this. And I remember thinking to myself, I went out to my car and I was like, fuck that guy. What the hell does he know? And I sat in my car and I cried, and I was like, I think he's right. And I knew deep down that he was right, even though I didn't want to believe it. So that went on for another month or so before I kind of finally had to pull the plug. But yeah, my lesson on that is listen to your accountants. Yes. There's really, when you look at the financial records of a business, of any business, you can look really quickly at a P&L and balance sheet and tell the health of the company. Sure. If you don't know how to read a P&L and balance sheet, my suggestion is go take a course, go online, go on Udemy or Udacity or whatever, go find a financial plan or a financial reporting course where you learn how to read these financial models. And the only way to really know it is to just do it constantly. Read financial models all the time. And really, when you dig down into a P&L and balance sheet, it's really quite simple. You look at the bottom, is there brackets or a negative or is it red? It's pretty much simple. Like, is there a bracket around the number? That's bad. If there's a dash in front of it, also bad. If it's red, very bad.
Yes.
So, you have to learn to read financial plans. And if you can, once you have that skill set, now you start to develop this language of business. And when you start talking in gross margins and profits and net and EBITDAs, when you start talking in that language, the world opens up to you as a business person. Because if you don't speak that language and you don't understand that, you're going to fail as a business person. So first thing you do before doing anything in business is learn how to read and understand financial reporting. Because if you don't do that, you will fail, guaranteed.
Yeah.
And so I didn't understand that. So I took a bunch of courses. I bought, probably 20 books on the subject and learned how to do it. And there's a game called, it's also by Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy. There's a board game called Cash Flow. I think it's called Cash Flow.
That's right.
I have it here somewhere. Anyway, that game is a very simple way to learn how to read a balance sheet. And it's like, what are your assets? What are your liabilities? What is your net? And that's it. And you learn about cash flow. You learn about what contributing factors, what's an asset versus a liability. Everybody buys their house and say, oh, this is the best asset. Well, your house doesn't make you money. It is therefore not an asset.
No.
It is a liability. It is on your balance sheet as an asset, but it is not an asset. It does not make you money. No. If you rent out a basement, then it becomes an asset.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand the difference between, something that makes them money versus something that costs them money. Your car is definitely not an asset, even though they call it a depreciating asset. It is not. It is a depreciating liability. It's even worse. You have a debt on something that's losing money. So you're paying for something that actually is decreasing in value.
Very depressing. Very depressing.
Yeah. Sorry about that. If you really want to get crazy, buy a boat. Yeah. You may as well just take all your money, light it on fire, and throw it in the water. That's a boat. Yeah. Fun, but anyway. So I went on from there, and I ended up starting a series of just different companies. I owned a real estate holding company. I made a lot of money back in the day, and I was still DJing on the weekends as well. And so I remember the day where I decided to DJ full time, and I was in a doctor's office. This was my third visit to these guys, and they were hemming and hawing about jumping on the plan. And I remember standing there. I got a phone call while I was with them, and I said, let me just take this call while you guys decide what you're going to do. I went into the hall. I took a phone call, and it was a woman, and her daughter was getting married. She said, hey, I need a DJ. I heard you're amazing. Can you DJ my daughter's wedding? And I want this, this, and this. I was like, okay. That was a $3,000 sale in 5 minutes. And I had this moment, like, I've been back and forth with these doctors for months, and I'm going to make about the same as I did in 5 minutes on a phone call. And so I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm not having fun with it. It's not what I want to do. I'm out. And so I ended up going on and just DJing full time. I said, I'm just going to DJ full time. And, we turned that into about a little over $500,000 business over the next, couple of years. I started a memory pill company because I don't know if anybody's read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's an amazing book. Tim Ferriss, he's an amazing human being. He's basically a human guinea pig. The guy documents every single thing. So he'll go a month of fasting, and he'll document everything from his blood, his blood sugars to his pulse, everything. And so he has this crazy record of him trying all these different things. So, one of his things was, I want to get down to working only 4 hours a week. And so he automated his email list, or his email system. He basically put his entire business on autopilot, and then traveled the world. And so he wrote this book called 4-Hour Workweek, which I took literally, and I tried to. And there's a lot of great value in that book. I wouldn't suggest anybody trying to get down to a 4-hour workweek because, one, you're going to be bored, and two, my friend of mine does this now. He travels the world and he works a couple hours a day. with an online business, it's definitely a lifestyle thing. Like my friend, literally, he was just 3 months in Asia. I think he's coming back to Toronto for a month, and he just Airbnbs everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
So his life is different than most. It's not for everybody, but he's kind of taken that 4-hour work week to heart and really made a thing out of it. For me, I couldn't do it. I actually ended up starting a memory pill, like a nutraceutical company, because that's what Tim Ferriss did in his book. So I figured, I'll do this, and started a nutraceutical company, and it was successful. We made money, but the way we made money was slightly unethical. We did this free trial thing, and then month 2 you got dinged on your credit card, and we made it almost impossible for you to cancel. And it was, I had a mentor teaching me on this, and this was his business world, and he did it with kind of penis enlargement pill type things. And I thought, this is great, we're making lots of money. And then I started getting the phone calls from elderly people saying, you're ripping me off, you're stealing from me, this is awful. And honestly, after the first 3 phone calls, I was like, that's it, I can't do this. This is not me.
No.
I'm not going to rip off. And so I actually closed the company, destroyed all the inventory, and refunded everybody their money.
Wow.
Just couldn't do it. I couldn't live with it.
Well done, Alan. I mean, the thing is, we all have to go down these journeys because there's a different thing that is calling us to want to do it. It could be, the wanting the money at the end of the day, the income that is attractive, and also there are people out there that are telling us, or we come across these people that kind of go, this is really a great thing, you've really got to be doing this. And on the surface it all looks amazing, but then we have to experience it and go through it to realize. So well done to you.
Oh, thank you. There's and every time you do something, and listen, this is advice for anybody who's going to get into entrepreneurship or starting their own business or whatever it is. And there is a difference between being a business owner and an entrepreneur. So we'll get to that in a second.
I agree.
But anybody getting into business, you have to love what you do. And I know it seems so, so trite to say you got, love what you do and, never work a day in your life. No, that's a lie. You're going to work your ass off harder than anybody else. And the people who are successful work their ass off. There is no secret passage to success. But I can tell you, if you don't love what you do and you're working 18-hour days, you're going to hate your life. And so love what you do. One of the lessons I learned from the Memory Plus thing was that, I learned e-commerce. I learned a lot about how to do e-commerce, how to, launch something, how to market online, how to set up an e-commerce site, how to set up a high risk payment processing, because payment processing is something you need. If you can't take people's money, then you don't have a business. So I learned all about that. There was a lot I learned. But I think at the end of the day, the main lesson was I need to really love what I'm doing and love the product. And so the next business I started was with some friends of mine. We actually I was mountain biking in a ski resort in Toronto, or just north of Toronto, called Blue Mountain. And we're mountain biking all day, and we're, end of the day, we're all exhausted. We say, hey, let's go stay at the hostel. And we realized there was no hostel at the ski resort. Now, I've traveled all over the place in Europe and stuff, in hostels in US and BC and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was no hostel at a ski resort. That didn't make sense to me. I was like, that doesn't make sense. So we ended up buying a huge property right next to the main lift, and we turned it into a 32-bed hostel called the Blue Mountain Hostel. Gorgeous. And it was amazing. We had this panoramic view of this entire mountain, and we had people from ski patrollers to people traveling around the world. We had a rule that if you lived within 50 kilometers of the hostel, you couldn't stay there. We didn't want locals just using it as a crash pad or a party place or something. So we ended up making this beautiful place. And then we put a sign on the front lawn. And we didn't just put a sign. We actually took this giant rock that was out front, and we had it laser etched or I guess sandblasted with our logo on it. And had, beautifully done. And it's the second we had the sign up, we started getting complaints from the neighbors. We don't want a hostel here. This is for drug dealers. Wow. Oh God, it was awful. And this is a town where every single house is being rented out for short-term rentals. And these people are now, fighting us. So we ended up losing that battle, and we ended up losing a lot of money. We ended up having to sell all of our other assets to just kind of pay for that losses on that. And it sucked.
Yeah,
that was a lesson on getting your ass handed to you. And again, the arrogance of youth. We thought we could fight them and and win, instead of trying to partner with them and figure out how can we work together. Instead of having open conversations with these people about what we're doing, and it's always better to have open conversations with people rather than just try to fight. Even if they're angry at you, open up and have a conversation about people, about what's going on. And a lot of times there's fears there that are well founded. Maybe they've been to a hostel before, and it was their mind, especially in Ontario, was hostels are for drug dealers and rehab people. Like a men's hostel or a men's shelter or something. That's what they were thinking.
Yeah, and people, I mean, they're in this paradigm, and that's what they believe, and or what they perceive. And the saying, perception is reality. That is their reality. And even if you did manage to talk to them and show them and involve them, it might still be a loss. They may still not have bought it.
It might not have worked, but at least it would be a better shot than trying to fight them.
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah.
But anyway, that we lost that, and so that was kind of a retreat and get back to business. So ended up in 2010, I was still DJing, and we built our DJ company up, and we were doing about $500,000 in the DJ business. So it really, I still had income, and I didn't have to worry about that, and we still lived a nice life, and we built the business up. And then in 2010, in June 2010, a friend of mine sent me a YouTube video, and he said, "Hey, check this out. I know you love DJing. Check this out." And it was a video of this see-through touchscreen, and this guy was DJing on a see-through touchscreen piece of glass, and the camera was behind him, and it showed him doing this with the lights on. And then as it panned around, the lights went off, and you could see what he was doing from the front side. Like, it was basically he's DJing on a Tron-like piece of glass.
Yeah.
And I had this like, whoa, this is crazy. I want that. And so I was like, I'm going to buy that. I'm having that. And that's what's going to differentiate me from other DJs. Yeah. I'm going to buy one of those. So I phoned Guitar Center. I phoned Long & McQuaid. I phoned all these music centers around the world. Nobody had ever even heard of it. And at the time I saw the video, it had 30,000 views. And by the time I partnered with the guy who made the software and we ended up making a partnership, it had 8 million views. And so I ended up finding the guy who made the software in Argentina, and his name was Pablo Martin. And I made a partnership with him. I said, "Look, I'll run the business. I'll do the hardware. I'll deal with all of that. You just deal with the software side because that's what you're good at. And we'll make a 50-50 partnership." We did that, and we launched at a TEDx Toronto event in Toronto in September. And we signed our partnership. I remember it was September 10th. We signed the partnership, and by October 10th, we were presenting at TED.
Wow.
And yeah, it was it was crazy. It was a crazy month because we didn't know how to build the hardware. We had to do everything by scratch, and there's a lot of logistics to go in creating a new product from scratch. And then from there I got invited to Amsterdam. I went and performed in Amsterdam and built a reseller network in Amsterdam, or in I guess Benelux. And so it ended up being this crazy, the video went viral. Our product kind of started taking off. We started making promotional videos. And then by January, I said, look, as long as we get to go to NAM, which is the National Association of Music Merchants, and in Europe, you guys have a Music Messe in Frankfurt every year. And Music Messe is this giant mass. It's basically the entire mess, the entire convention mess, filled with music. There's like 1 million guitars, 1 million drums. Just insane. And so I went to this one in Anaheim, California, called NAMM. We launched. We had a little 10x10 booth, which we could barely afford, and we ended up meeting with Cascade, who is a huge DJ, Richie Houghton. We ended up meeting all these amazing artists at this thing because they just walk around looking for cool stuff. And we had the coolest thing. So we ended up getting a couple of resellers out of the deal, and we ended up growing this business. And so we grew the business, and we ended up building a globally recognized product and brand. And there's actually a few of them in the UK. There's one in Manchester in a club called Australasia.
Right.
And there's one there. There's a couple in London. I ended up playing in I made a list of all the things I wanted to do, all the places I wanted to DJ. and one of them was in the Box at Ministry of Sound in London.
Oh yeah.
It's an iconic nightclub venue, and I ended up playing there and checking that off my list. And it was, I don't even think it's there anymore. I think it's condos. But man, I was what a trip. I got to play in Dubai. I got to play all over the world while promoting this amazing touchscreen. So I basically was on a plane for 3 years.
Whoa.
Fast forward, we ran out of money again because we were trying to really push the limits of the technology, make it better and better and better, and sell and market. And we just weren't we weren't funded enough. We needed to probably raise about $1 million to make this thing a successful venture, and we didn't. We raised 300,000, and we just couldn't catch up. We were always kind of behind. And so in 2015 or 14 or 15, 2014, I think, we ended up looking for investors, outside investors. And I remember we did an investor pitch, and we had this new product, and it was called the Emulator Elite. And what it was the entire package of this touchscreen folded into a box. So when you got to your gig, you literally unlocked the lid, you opened the lid, and the screen popped out of it, and it was like 7 seconds.
Wow. And
this was like the penultimate of what I wanted. I envisioned this box that I pressed a button, it opened itself, and like now I'm up and running DJing in seconds. Mm-hmm. So we built it, and the first prototype, we picked it up on our way to the presentation. And when we set it up, we realized that we had used the wrong metal, the wrong material.
Oh no.
And it was very flexible because we wanted it lightweight. But we lost all rigidity.
Oh
so
no.
Here's this glass screen sitting on this thing, and it looks beautiful until you touch it, and it all wobbles. It's
wow.
like, and so if you can imagine a projector shining on it, any little bit of wobble, and now the image is all skewed, right?
Yeah.
So it's completely useless.
Oh no.
So here we are, countdown. We got an hour before people get there, and and this thing is completely useless. So I'm like, okay, listen, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a table. So we took a cocktail table and we wedged it underneath the screen and put the computer on it to make it look like it was meant to be there. And it held it up in place, and it held it all perfectly, steady. So as long as you didn't touch it too hard, it didn't. It looked the part. So we did this pitch, and by the end of the pitch, we had raised $1 million.
Wow!
And so it was an amazing day. We were all, celebrating, and this is great, and we're gonna, this company is gonna put the money in, and we're gonna grow this company, and it's gonna be awesome. So we had about 3 months runway of cash to do this. And after doing due diligence and going through the process, 2 months later, we realized that the company didn't have the money. They actually didn't have the money. So I think the lesson here is, if you're going to raise money, take a look at the financials of the company that's going to invest in you. It's just as important as you showing them your financials.
Yes.
Because we didn't even know. They didn't have the money.
Oh my God.
How do you deal with that?
I don't know. How did you deal with it?
It sucked. I'm not going to lie. We basically had to stop and start trying to find money again.
Yeah.
And so we were in an incubator at the time in the Ryerson Digital Media Zone, which is, I think, North America's number 2 business incubator. And at the time, it was just kind of starting as well. And so we went and found another investor, and these guys were ready to put $1 million in. And I'm not even sure what happened, but they just basically disappeared. They wouldn't return our calls. They went completely radio silent. So here we are. We've run out of cash flow. We're desperate. And we finally found this other investor, and I had dropped it from $1 million to $250. I'm like, let's just raise what we need to get through, to keep the company going.
Yes.
So I found this investor. He was willing to put $250 in. I said, okay, I'm gonna come down to Miami and meet with you, and we'll do this deal. So get in the car, pack the kids in the car, and we drove down to Miami with our last $1,000. And we get to Miami, we have no money, like literally broke. And this investor says, okay, I'll invest the money. And as we're talking, he realizes that we're completely broke. And he goes, okay, well, I'm going to put $250 in, but instead of getting 25% of the company, I want 50% of the company.
Yeah.
So this bad deal just went from bad to worse. And I was like, okay, well, we don't have a choice. So we took the deal. Came back to Ontario, to Toronto, and it was a shitty deal, but it was a deal, and it was, was what it was.
Yeah.
And then we went on Dragon's Den. And Dragon's Den, as you guys have in UK, we have the same thing here in Canada.
Right.
And it's a pretty big show here. It's one of the most popular shows in Canada. And we went on Dragon's Den, and we got a deal with 4 out of the 5 dragons
Whoa.
for $500,000 for a third of the company.
Right.
And so here we are with a deal with the dragons, a deal with the devil
Yes.
on one side, basically saying, hey, I'm going to take half your company for $250,000 and I control everything, versus taking a deal with these angel investor with the Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
So we were kind of screwed, and then this investor said, well, if you take the deal with the dragons, I'm going to sue you. And basically, if I sue you, they're not going to invest, and that's it, you're screwed. So we ended up having, this is our how we started our relationship with this guy. So lesson learned here, and if you're going to raise money from an investor, go out for dinner, get to know this person, figure out if you're compatible. Are these people you want to be in bed with, that you want to do business with, that you love and see a future with?
Yes.
If the answer is a remotely no, run for the hills and find somebody else. There is a lot of money in the world. Go find it. But do not jump into bed with anybody that you feel slightly uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening, we ended up not getting the deal with the dragons. We ended up taking this deal with this guy. He ended up taking full control of the company and fucking up the company in a major way, basically burning through all the cash. He did everything the opposite of the business plan. I spent days, weeks, months putting together this business plan, and he did everything the opposite. He was just trying to save a buck here and there. And I didn't realize till after what he was doing. He was building the infrastructure in Miami to be able to take over the company, and he's burning the company out of cash so he could put more money in and then take controlling shares of the company.
Wow.
So your shareholder agreement really is a gold piece of paper. And so people don't, entrepreneurs aren't lawyers. They don't really know.
No.
Make sure you have a lawyer on side that is looking for your best interest only. That's the lesson I learned there. Ended up, fast forward a little bit, we fought every single day because he was doing everything wrong. Prime example, we said, don't ship anything by FedEx. They break things. And we're shipping a $15,000 product made of glass.
Yeah.
And with, technology in it. So the first one ships by FedEx, and of course it arrives to the customer all broken. So I said, okay, well, we learned, and we tried to, go through their insurance. They're like, no, it doesn't matter. So we lost, our cost was probably $6,000 or something. We lost $6,000. So I'm like, okay, we're not going to do that again. He shipped 4 more by FedEx.
Oh.
4 more. Yeah. And all 4 got broken.
Oh no.
So it was just like, okay,
what's the matter with the guy?
Well, that was all part of his plan, right? To burn it into the ground so he could add more cash and take over the company, which I didn't see coming. How do you see, as an entrepreneur, how do you see that coming? Who wastes money like that?
Yeah, it's not
on purpose.
Oh, that's just ridiculous. How would you expect anybody to do that?
You don't. But there are parasitic investors out there that their whole job is to find ways to push out the entrepreneurs and take over the companies. That's their whole modus operandi, and that happens way more than you think. Happens in the Valley. It happens everywhere.
Wow.
And the problem is nobody calls these guys out, and so they end up getting away with it. And it's one of those things that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So anyway, I ended up I was in Vegas at a conference, promoting Emulator, and it was funny. It was the exact same day where the Dragon's Den episode aired in Canada. It was in October, and the show aired in Canada. Then on the same day it aired, or the day before that it aired, this investor fired my wife from our company.
This is getting worse by the minute.
Oh, it was the worst thing you can imagine. And I remember standing at the low point of my life, I think, and of especially of that part of the business. I was standing in Miami in a patio furniture warehouse, like manufacturer. So his brother owned a patio furniture warehouse where they made patio furniture in this giant, 50,000 square foot, shithole in the middle of the ghetto of Miami. And I'm sitting there by myself on a Saturday, surrounded by, emulator parts, because he had also, said, hey, these guys are going to help you make this thing because they're metal workers or whatever. I was like, okay. They didn't speak English, so it was okay. I know enough Spanish to get it done. And then because he was being cheap and didn't want to pay them extra, he basically pissed them off, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to work on this. We don't want to work on this anymore." And they walked away. They walked off the job. Oh. So now I'm standing there with 5 unfinished products in a room in this sweatshop in Miami, and I'm literally bawling my eyes out. I don't know what to do. I'm crying. I'm just sitting there like, this was just, I didn't know what to do. And I'm all alone, and it was the worst.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, here's another lesson for anybody that's going to take on an investor. Make sure that you control your bank accounts. And when an investor puts money in, get them to put the full amount in, and you have 100% control of that funds, period.
Totally.
Do not accept anything less than that. Because otherwise, you lose control. If you don't have control of the money, you don't have control of your company.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. So anyway, fast forward another 9 months of hell. And I ended up getting fired from my own company. And what he did was he basically convinced our board, which was me, my friend, my partner, and then he had 2 board seats. So what he did was he talked to my partner in Argentina and said, hey, if you don't vote against Alan or vote him out of the company, you're not getting paid this week.
Oh.
Yeah. So I got voted out of my own company. Oh. And so if I go back about 6 months before that, I ended up getting invited to this thing called Curiosity Camp. And what it was a Boy Scout camp for tech entrepreneurs, investors, and basically the tech industry in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's by invitation only, and you have to have done something really cool. So I got invited because of the emulator. Other people got invited for creating drones. There was a guy who created one of the first founders of DJI. There was the guy who created Bing for Microsoft was there. Like it was the who's who of the tech industry. So you get to this Boy Scout camp. It's in the middle of the hills. There's no cell phone signal, no Wi-Fi. It's literally a tech conference with no tech. And so, here I am meeting with these incredible, business minds and investor minds and tech minds.
Yeah.
And I remember, I got to DJ there because I brought the emulator and they wanted to see that. And I got to DJ there for them. But then there was all these tents, and one of the tents, I walked in and it was this quiet little tent. And there was this computer there and this headset thing that people were wearing. It looked like a scuba mask.
Yes.
And this guy, I was sitting with this guy called Robert Scoble, and we were shooting the shit and talking. And he goes, okay, he tried it on. He goes, oh my God, you have to try this thing. So I went in, put this headset on my head, put on the headphones, and I was transported from this little tent in the middle of nowhere to a concert where I was literally standing there looking at this concert from the crowd.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And I just stared at the stage. And the guy goes, oh, here, he kind of turned me so that I realized I could turn all the way around. And I had this aha, like, oh my God moment when I was like, oh my God, I can look up, down, left, right. I can see everything. I'm literally there. Then he hit a button and it put me on stage standing right next to the artist.
That's mad.
Mind blown. Here I am. It's full stereoscopic sound. So the sound is like, if I turn my head, the sound kind of comes from the right way. I'm looking out in the audience. I'm in a stage with an artist standing 6 feet away from him. Wow. And it was Beck. It was a Beck concert. And that was the moment I said, that is it. I'm all in VR. Like I am doing this. This is my next thing. This is what I'm doing when I'm done with emulator.
Yeah.
So that was I think it was in June, right? A couple months before I got fired from my own company. So The day I got fired, the next morning I started a VR company the next day.
Wow. So, I mean, getting that invite was just such a massive gift to you.
It was. And the guy who invited me, Scott Bonham, I have to say thank you, Scott, for that. It was a TSN turning point. And it was a turning point in my life for sure.
Totally.
Because without that, I wouldn't have seen the future. I literally got to see the future.
But not only that, you've got into an area of the future that is just going to be unbelievable. People don't even realize what's coming down the track with this. No one has any idea.
No. So here, to put it in perspective, in the next, so let's say in 5 years from now, I think it'll be less, but let's call it 5 years. In 5 years from now, you won't use your cell phone anymore. You will have a pair of glasses that does everything, and the world will be projected on in 3 dimensions.
Whoa.
We're already starting to program for this. We're already starting to learn how to deal with this. Enterprise is kind of driving this because there's enterprise solutions that can be rolled out now. Last night, I spoke at the Toronto Stock Exchange on the VR, virtual and augmented reality investing world.
I saw your post on LinkedIn about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I went from being basically fired from my own company to not knowing anything about VR, like nothing, literally less than nothing. But I'm gonna start a VR company, and that's what I'm gonna do. So I muddled my way through it, and within the first 6 months, we had partnered with another guy who did augmented reality. We made some really cool stuff. We did a couple projects together. We ended up making a couple big sales right away, which really helped. And we ended up doing some great work. And I wrote a white paper. It was the first white paper for VR and AR for marketing in the world. And the reason I wrote the white paper is because I figured if I had to write a white paper, I had to learn it all.
Yes.
And so there's another way that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to start something, especially in a field that's either new or you don't understand or you don't know. Write about it, and the more you write about it, the more you have to learn about it. So if you it's the medical school model. Watch, do, teach. So you watch it be done, you do it, and then you teach it.
Yeah. And
that act of teaching it really reinforces it, because if you're going to write about it and teach about it, you better be damn sure that you got it right.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. And in fact, I always say the teachers or people that are trainers, educators, or are speakers about the topic, the reason they are talking about the topic so that they can become absolutely fluent and understand it inside out.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So when you're going around talking about it on stage and in stock exchanges and all of these things, you're just becoming a deeper expert in this sector.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of those things that you need to be the best in the world. My goal is to, my goal with virtual reality is to build the most respected and largest brand in VR for VR consulting and products. So we started off as an agency. We were going to be the biggest agency in VR. And we realized that I just don't want to be in an agency. I'm a product development person. I invent products and build products. I don't, the agency world is great, and we do a lot of agency work. We started doing 360 videos. We started doing apps. We did a bunch of agency stuff, and we still do a lot of marketing stuff because that's where the market is right now.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we want to create products that scale, and that's where we're going with this. We're really focused on developing products. So one of the first products we developed as MetaVRse is the VR photo booth. We actually invented a VR photo booth where you go in a 10 by 10 by 10 green screen box, and there's a camera in the middle, and that camera allows you to get a picture and then Photoshop yourself underwater or in space, or I can put myself in the middle of London Square, anything, and see yourself in VR. So imagine, for marketing events and stuff like that, it's an incredible tool. And we ended up, we just worked with Samsung on their developers conference 2 weeks ago. And we've done this at the Toronto International Film Festival. We did it at Canada's largest street festival. And we really are making it into a product and rolling it out. In 2018, it'll be rolled out as a product across North America and parts of Asia as well.
And this booth is, how big is it?
It's actually 9 by 9 by 9. It's 9 feet, so
right.
3 meters by 3 meters squared.
Okay.
Cube.
Yeah, got you. Okay.
3 meters cube. Yep. So it's portable, right? We have a tent version. So those pop-up tents you see at anything really.
Yeah.
We built one of those as well.
Okay.
So it just pops up, the walls go on, and it's a green screen room. Top, bottom, left, right. You walk in, it sets up in 15 minutes. So we've got the tent version, we've got a pro version, we're building a trailer version for festivals. Yeah, we're productizing this thing, and it's going out on scale.
Brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, that's product one. We're building a new product that will be launched at CES in January. It's augmented reality business cards. So you'll be able to create augmented reality business cards for yourself using our platform. And,
wow.
it's going to be really cool because the only reason we actually even thought of that, we made augmented reality business cards. We made a video augmented reality where our business cards catch on fire and then explode. And people just loved it. We did it as a joke. And people loved it. And it is by far the most requested thing that we get. Hey, can you make my business cards augmented reality? And after hundreds of these requests, we're like, finally, okay, you know what? We just got to make a platform to because we don't want to be in the business of making business cards explode. It's just we have bigger plans than that. But you can't discount the fact that so many people request the product. And that's another thing is sometimes as an entrepreneur, especially when we talked about the difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur, and I think the definition of an entrepreneur is doing something that's never been done before and paving a path that's never been done before. And that could be a business process, could be a new product, could be a new field. So, if you look at MetaVRse, we're in a new field. We're completely doing a new business model because our business model is actually completely different than anything else has been done before. And we're inventing products as we go. So I don't think it gets any more entrepreneurial than that.
Totally.
I also wouldn't recommend that to people. I would recommend if you're going to build a new product, try to do so with proven business practices. Don't try to reinvent all three at once. That's crazy. I strongly recommend doing one thing at a time really well.
Do you realize now, Alan, that the journey that you've been down through some of these other companies that you started and then stopped, and all of the experience that you had through all of those, although some perhaps were not happy experiences, they all got you ready for this one?
Oh, absolutely. There's a saying in Silicon Valley, fail fast.
Yeah.
And what that means is, look, if you're going to make mistakes, make them. Don't harp on them, learn from them. Like when I lost the hostel, I learned, okay, zoning is important. Whenever I go into invest in a property and I want to change the zoning, I learned that. I learned all sorts of things about that particular world. And I haven't invested in, I'm actually pretty gun shy. I haven't invested in real estate since.
No.
It's been 10 years, but every business gives you, or in every opportunity you learn. And what I typically recommend to people that are, working at big companies, is start your business on the side, keep it as a side hustle, keep it quiet. Do not use any company resources because, depending on your agreement with their company, they may be able to take the IP from you. But don't use any resources of the company, time or physical. Don't use any of their computers. Do it all separate. But do it on the side. Get ready for it. But the other thing that I recommend to everybody who works for a big company, most big companies offer incredible education plans.
Yeah.
And they'll pay for all your education. All you have to do is pick the courses you want to take and take them.
Yeah.
So go and take every damn course they will pay for. Because once you become an entrepreneur, you got to pay for those courses, and it gets really expensive. I probably spend about $10,000 a year on courses, and that gets really expensive as an entrepreneur, especially when you're starting out. And so, learn as much as humanly possible in your world. And most entrepreneurial or I guess products come born out of problems that people see in their workplace. So you're working at a big company, and then you see like this process is broken, it doesn't work well, why don't they fix it? And then you realize, well, what if I just fixed it and sold it back to them? That happens a lot.
Yeah. And
then that's a really good way to get a business off the ground, is finding problems within what you're doing. I personally write down, I have ideas every single day on different business ideas, products, this and that. I write them all down. I have a research folder in Google Documents that I keep track. So, for example, a year and a half ago, I thought 3D product, like creating 3D products is going to be a big market. So every website in the world is going to need this 3D product view or augmented reality view or virtual reality view. So I started researching this a year and a half ago. And now that's actually becoming one of our main products, is 3D asset creation as MetaVRse, because we realized that nobody in the world is doing a good job at this, and we can do it on scale. Only because I've just kept the research going. And every time I saw somebody doing something in that field, I reached out to them, said, hey, love what you're doing, love to keep in touch, kept their, and get them to send me their brochures or their website or whatever it was, kept this file. So now I have this really enormous research folder on that particular thing. And now it's funny because we're talking with a company now to acquire them because they have a technology that we need to do this on scale. So it's an interesting phenomenon. When you think of a product, it may not be the right timing. And here's something I got to give people advice. Timing on an entrepreneurial venture, not necessarily a business venture, but an entrepreneurial venture, timing is 70% of your success.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, it's all about the team, or it's all about the product, or it's all about the marketing, or it's all about the sales. It's all about timing. I got into VR 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, and VR was nothing. People didn't even know what it was. So I spent the last 2 years running around like an idiot teaching people about VR. We weren't making a lot of money. We just did everything to position ourselves as the VR company.
Yeah.
And now that VR is finally starting to get, some traction, and people are going, oh, this VR thing, maybe we can use it for this. What about this? What about this? They're going, well, does anybody know anybody in VR? And now we're getting the referrals. So timing is everything. I think we probably could have started MetaVRse a month ago and still been successful, because the timing now is important.
Yeah.
But timing is everything. And in this company that we're looking to acquire, they started 4 years ago, and they basically ran out of money because they were just way, way too early. And they raised $1 million. So it's not like they didn't have the funding or the skill set or the product. It just there was no market.
No.
Timing is vital to an entrepreneurial venture.
Well, Alan, thank you. I was going to ask you a question about what was if there was one bit of advice you would give aspiring business owners or entrepreneurs, what advice would that be? You have already given us so many different versions. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Okay, so I think the one thing that's really helped me, in the last 6 months, I started writing every single day on LinkedIn, and I would encourage everybody to add me on LinkedIn. It's Alan Smithson, AlanSmithson. Just add me on LinkedIn. I went from 6,000 connections to over, I think it's about 14,000 now in the last 4 months.
Nearly 15,000.
And all I've been doing, it's
nearly 15.
Yeah, almost 15,000 in a short time, 3.5 months. And what I've been doing is I've just been writing every single day on lessons that I learned either before or now, just something that I learned during the day that I think could help other people. So one of the things I didn't mention is my big goal with MetaVRse and with everything is I want to build an education platform to teach kids how to think and act like entrepreneurs in a socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable way.
Wow.
So my goal is to train 1 million kids who go on to create $1 trillion in value in the world in a economic, socially, and environmentally sustainable way. And that, to me, is how we change the course of the world.
Totally.
And I'm looking at launching this in about 4 years from now. I've been planning it for 3 years, and the idea came from when I helped my daughter. My daughter was 9, and she came up with this idea. We put her in an inventors camp, and after inventors camp, she saw my wife had ugly sandal tans on her feet from the summer, and she said, "Wouldn't it be prettier with a heart-shaped sandal tan instead?" So she invented sandals that leave a heart-shaped tan line on top of your feet.
I did see that, yeah.
Called the Love Sand.
Absolutely amazing. And then that's still going?
It is. Now she's 13 now, and she's no longer really that interested in selling sandals, so I have a garage full of sandals. So, email me if you want a pair of sandals. They're awesome.
Yeah.
But you know what? As she gets older, she still owns the IP.
Yes.
She still owns the brand. She still has inventory to get the company off the ground. If she decides that she wants to do this in the future, the business is ready to go.
Absolutely.
And the lessons that she learned, I made her speak in front of 500 people. I made her go up on stage in front of 2,000 people at a retail conference. She's been on TV 11 times. She's been in all the newspapers. She won top 20 under 20 when she was 10 years old. These are lessons that I don't think will ever go away from her. And, even though she's not doing it right now, doing anything with it right this second, these are life lessons that will never go away. And so my goal is to teach kids the fundamentals of success in terms of deep breathing, yoga, mindfulness, positivity, gratitude, surrounding yourself with great people. And then on the other hand, marketing, sales, financial planning, investing, all the stuff we just talked about today.
Yes.
These are the fundamentals of success no matter what you do. if you become an employee or you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. Those are the fundamentals of success. And if I can leave people with one thing that really changed my life that I do almost every day, is I have a gratitude journal, and I use one called the 5-minute journal, written by two friends of mine, Alex and UJ. And it's basically write down every morning 3 things you're grateful for. And, above and beyond that, you can write down, what would make today great, and, how can you make it better? But write down 3 things you're grateful for every single day. And if you start your day with gratitude, it is almost impossible to have a bad day.
Yeah.
So gratitude is the key to ultimate success, gratitude and positivity. And as long as you have those 2 things, and the one business lesson that I was told that is literally the only business lesson you need to remember, the only one, if you forget everything else, never give up.
Yes.
That is the only rule in business, never give up.
Oh, well, and you certainly are the leading light in that, listening to your story. And thank you so much for sharing everything with us and all the things that happened, good and bad, because that's just so invaluable to me, to everybody that is listening, aspiring business owners, entrepreneurs. I really, really appreciate you for doing that. And
thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
And how can people get in touch with you, Alan? Apart from LinkedIn, which you've already given, and I'll put it in the show notes, is there anywhere else where they can look what you're doing in the VR and AR space? And
certainly. So our website is metaverse.com, and we spelled it METAVRSE.com. And metaverse, just a side note, metaverse means the world you're in when you're in virtual reality. You're in the metaverse.
Right.
And so it's kind of like calling your company the internet when the internet started.
Okay, got you.
So people can reach me at alan@metaverse.com, and it's ALAN@metaverse.com, or add me on LinkedIn, which is wonderful. The education platform that we're going to be building is going to be called the Unlimited Awesome Academy, and that will roll out in about 3.5 years.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Alan, thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic rest of your day and weekend, whatever you're up to. And I will definitely be continuing to follow your journey. VR and AR, augmented reality. It's the augmented reality, just a really tiny little story. I didn't realize how powerful it was until I saw the last Apple keynote, when they were pointing their iPad at a piece of wood, and they had this whole game explode on the table, which was just unbelievable. So I can't even imagine what's going to come down the track with this. So
it's going to get incredible. So the framework that Apple just introduced, AR Kit, and Google has AR Core, that is basically the foundational building blocks for teaching people how to code and how to program in 3 dimensions. Because up until now, we program for 2D screens. But imagine when the world is in 3 dimensions, that everything changes.
Yeah.
So there's a fundamental shift that needs to happen. That's why you're not going to see these augmented reality glasses in the public for the next 3 to 5 years, because we don't even know how to program for it yet. So, that's, and I say we as in, a collective. We actually have programmed stuff for AR, that's what we do, but most people don't know how to program for it. So it's going to take some time and enormous amounts of data. Imagine, the amount of data that we use on a daily basis on a 2D screen. Imagine when it's all around us.
Yeah.
3 dimensions, and objects have depth to them. So, you've got these, objects that are floating in midair, and you can walk around them and talk about them, and, you can have a full engine explode in front of you, not explode, but, exploded view, and really, dive into it. So education is going to be revolutionized by this. And there's not going to be a sector of enterprise or anything that will be unaffected by augmented and virtual reality.
I agree. Alan, thanks for your time. I'll let you go.
Thank you so much,
You spent
Michael.
so much time with us, so I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, it's really a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on.
Staying Alive UK. Share your story.